My void will consume you, if you ask nicely.
Your will is no longer your own.
Stay away from them. To arms!
You have led the Horde to a place without honor.
Your petty quarrels only make me stronger.
Our world needs us, champion.
You got it over your head.
We cannot let the world fall to darkness.
We're already lost.
Put your faith in the light, and all is possible.
Is it truly righteousness that drives you? I wonder.
It would seem you have guessed.
They are coming for you. This is the Whispers of War.
Hello everyone and welcome to show 98 of Whispers of War. I'm your host Sil, and let's jump into how was my week in Warcraft. Okay, confession time. I did not dabble in Warcraft at all this week. It's a bit weird. I was so into it, like playing every day, and then all of a sudden I'm just a bit like, okay, I need to take a tiny break from it now, just because I guess it's because I've been doing so much leveling, and I know they're still doing stuff with the classes now in Shadowlands in the beta, and I don't really want to. I don't really feel like it would be representative to jump into the game now and try out classes because they are still tweaking them. I only know about a few classes that might have been finished. I think is Priest finished? That's what I've heard at least. So I'm a little bit like, okay, I would really be jumping in not to try the classes, which I really wanna do, to pick a main, or I also want to do the story, but I guess it ties into each other a little bit because I really do want to figure out what's going to be my main. I have to admit, I'm still standing by my last thoughts that I will probably stick with a subtlety rogue. I have no idea which faction, and first I thought, I could pick a faction that maybe is seen as the better one for the rogue players under the rogue community out there. And then I thought, nah, I just wanna go with the covenant that I enjoy the most, that the story appeals to me the most, and if they have great aesthetics, that is even better. And I have to admit, with everything that I've seen, I would prefer the looks of Revendreth, but I am not 100% certain on that. I do like anything that has to do like with night elves, in the sense of the Ardenwalds, because I think some of you might know I love anything that has to do with mythology and lore and mythical creatures. And when you look up Fae and their realms, you have like different courts, and I quite like that this is actually the autumn and the winter court, because in a lot of books about this kind of stuff, and I'm not talking about Warcraft stuff, but general books that are out there about fairies and Fae and elves, when you talk about the court for autumn and winter, they're actually quite dark, and a lot of trickster fairies are in there, and fairies that have to do with death, the not so nicer ones. Not that all fairies are nice, but you know what I mean. So there is a certain appeal there. I quite like the fact that it seems more like a mischievous court, and I don't know, it has a certain appeal to me. Of course, I don't know if this is also the case in World of Warcraft, or if they're just making it, oh no, this all has to do with, life ending because it's the Shadowlands, and I don't know. We will have to see. So far, from what I've seen from Ardenwald, I do like the aesthetics. I am not into the whole, oh, look at my pretty butterfly wings for my character, for instance. That's not something I would be completely meh with, but I feel like those two are such extremes, like Ardenwald and Kyrian, like, oh, look at us being amazing and pretty and good, and then you have Revendreth and Maldraxxus being like very edgelord. And I fall somewhere in the middle. So I'm very much like, yeah, I like my edgelord, but sprinkled with a bit of fairy dust on top. You know, yeah, it's very difficult to find that that one that I really feel like, okay, this is something that really is me. But I have to admit, maybe there will be an NPC there that really appeals to me. Maybe there will be something of the story that I'm like, okay, this is really cool. I want to be part of this, and that's why I chose this faction. I don't know. We will see. So far, Covenants. I'm an open book. I'm really open for anything, even Kyrian. Even though it's not my first choice, if I'm honest. But you never know with what comes across your path there. I'm going to try to play a bit of the beta this week. I think I will just try it out on the Subtlety Rogue that I made. See how it plays. And yeah, we'll go from there. Like I said, I'm part of me is tempted to go completely different and go for a ranged class. The only two ranged that I'm interested in at the moment is Mage or Hunter. But again, I am not... They're not classes that really appeal to me. Hunter probably a little bit more, but I so far I think I'm sticking with the Rogue, but I think I will change my Void Elf into something else. I'm not quite sure which race yet. We will have to see that, or maybe that will be another little side project, and I will have to make another Rogue. The other class that is actually really appealing to me, and this is quite bizarre, is Paladin. And I know that I'm setting myself up for a lot of like, what's the word? Despair, perhaps, because I only really like red. But I feel like when I play a Paladin, I should really be able to do all the roles. Whereas with a Rogue, I'm like, yeah, fuck it, I'm subtlety, tough. And with Paladin, I feel like I need to make myself useful. You know, you're a hybrid class. At least pick either tank or healing. And I did like tanking on the really low levels. But on the higher levels, it just wants me to stab my eyes out with a rusty spoon. And healing... some people are amazing at it. I used to do it back in the day. I don't think I was amazing at it, but people didn't die. It doesn't give me any satisfaction. I find it very much like healing for me feels almost like, okay, I'm just playing the nameplate game and that's about it. Because, you know, I just look at the nameplates and I don't really even look at my surroundings, which doesn't always work in a raid environment. So I just don't really enjoy that from that point of view. There is also a certain serenity that you get from healing. Which might sound really daft, me saying it like that, but it's like, okay, well, at least, you know, people are topped up, I'm doing fine. Whereas with DPS, you know, it's always about the meters. But like I always say, someone has to be on the bottom, and I'm cool with that being me. As long as I don't annoy people, then I'm okay with that. So I really hope I don't annoy people saying that. Yeah, so I think it's either going to be Paladin, Warrior or Rogue. I really think it's those three. Death Knight is not bad. No offense to all the Death Knight players, but it's just, it feels a little bit slow for me. And I quite like the things that, you know, Subtlety Rope, you're poof behind something and then you vanish and you poof behind the next one. With Warriors, you charge, which I really, really enjoyed. That's what I used to enjoy with Druid tanking. The charge is just very satisfying. I don't know why. It just feels like there's no downtime. And I don't know. I get the same feeling with Paladin. Like there's always something to cast. There's always something you could do. I don't get that feeling with Death Knights. I feel like it's a little bit slower. Yeah. I don't know. It's not my thing, but I know that a lot of people love the Death Knights. I don't see anything bad with them. It's just that little bit of slow pace that I just don't deal with. The same with Warlocks. Too fucking slow. I can't deal with that. But that doesn't mean that the class isn't cool. But I've noticed that this is a very important factor for me. So yeah, 3, I guess, is not bad to level, right? In Shadowlands, at least that would mean that I have all my bases covered. I guess for my 4th one, because I do want to be with all the areas, I need to figure out where my warrior and my paladin will go. Now, I have a suspicion, knowing me, that my paladin will probably go Kyrian, because why the fuck not? So she will go Kyrian. Then my rogue is undecided, though I think it might be Revendreth. And then I think my warrior will go Maldraxxus, because I don't know, I quite like I like the mount there. I really do, and I just feel like it fits a warrior really well. Now I need to figure out what would suit Ardenwold, and the obvious ones are always, you know, hunter or druid. I am not going to play druid this expansion. I really did not enjoy it in the beta. I died on the first quest. That could also be because I'm a really shitty druid and I didn't have anything keybind, and you know, it was a disaster. It was a shit show. So maybe that's it. Maybe I should play it as feral. That might be a better choice. So yeah, I'm kind of like contradicting myself now, aren't I? Because I said I wasn't going to play druid, but now I'm thinking, well, feral might be an option, but I just don't think ferals have gotten a lot of love over the years. I think Blizzard really needs to look at the druid class and not focus on just resto, or maybe a little bit on balance. I think they need to really look at the class overall, because that's what it's, you know, it has to. I guess there's demon hunters. What the fuck a demon hunter would do in Ardenwold is maybe she's looking for her night elf roots, I guess. Or yeah, I don't know. I need to think about that. But people keep saying to me, if you like rogue, do demon hunter, do demon hunter. So I might have to give that one a chance. And otherwise, I guess I would go hunter? Maybe? I don't know. Yeah, I'm open for suggestions, guys. If you're like, oh no, don't do paladin, or don't do... I've already set my mind up. I really think I'm sticking with the rogue, because I love the playstyle of the rogue. I love the fact that you can sneak around and everything, but I think I need some guidance. So I am very happy for 3 other class suggestions, and why you would suggest it for me, not why you might love it so much, because we're all different. But you know what, I think most listeners who've listened to me know a little bit what I'm about. So yeah, give me things that will convince me to play that class, because you know, who the fuck knows, I might also play a priest. I don't think that will ever fucking happen, but again, nothing wrong with priests, I just can't play them. And the fact that you have to heal on 2 specs, no one wants that. Not in my shoes. So yeah, no one wants me healing in either spec. So try to convince me of something. That's your challenge for next time. I might even make that a question of the week, just because why not? Talking about questions of the week, the question for this week was about the factions and the divide. The question I always ask every guest, but I want to know from you guys how you feel about it. So we'll talk about that once I come back. But first, I'm going to leave you with an interview I had with the lovely Jared. So we talked a lot. So there's a lot to digest, and a lot of lore stuff, and a lot about Shadowlands. So yeah, sit down, relax. The weather has changed, so have a nice warm cup of tea or coffee, or hot chocolate if you're inclined that way. And I will see you on the flip side. And with me today, I'm being joined by a very new and fresh voice yet again. I'm so happy with talking to all these new people. Welcome. Should I say Lore Master? Lore Master Jared?
That works.
I have been listening to the show, and I thought maybe I should call you Lore Master. Just put that in front of, you know, your name.
The title has a nice ring to it, I will say that.
I'm not going to promise you I'll keep that up for the entire show, just because, you know, I like it simple and quick. So
yeah, informal works perfectly fine.
Okay, perfect. So, Jared, why don't you tell the internet a little bit about who you are and what you do on the internet?
Well, where to even begin? I guess the most recent stuff is that I am on a podcast called Merely a Setback. It's a lore podcast focused more on storytelling in the world of Warcraft, and that's been the biggest thing that I've been a part of for the last couple of years now. But I am also a streamer on Twitch. I have a YouTube channel, and those have been going for the last couple of years as well. And as far as my like WoW career goes, I started playing in Wrath. Well, I say started playing in Wrath. I actually started my account in BC before the Wrath of the Lich King expansion dropped, but I didn't really get into the meat and potatoes of the game, so to speak, until Wrath of the Lich King. So I just say Wrath because it's easier. But yeah, I've been playing ever since. I fell in love with the game pretty much when the announcement for Wrath of the Lich King came out, because my little brother was really into Warcraft, and he had been playing the game since vanilla, and I'd seen him playing here and there, and have always kind of been like a fan of MMOs, and that watching him play World of Warcraft got me interested, and I asked him, like, where would you start me like learning about this game? And he was just like, just go play Warcraft 3, just shut up and go play it. So I did that. And then of course the announcement for Wrath of the Lich King came, and having played Warcraft 3, I was just like, okay, I have to play this now. I have to play Wrath of the Lich King and bring Arthas down, because who wouldn't really? So that's kind of how I got into it. I started raiding late into the expansion, and I think I have cleared every raid since Trial of the Grand Crusader.
Okay.
Which is something that I'm quite proud of.
Yeah, and rightfully so. I think why not? Why not be proud of your achievements in World of Warcraft? Okay, so let's go a little bit back about the whole media exposure, because I'm quite curious, because it's not just podcasting that you do, but it is right. Streaming, YouTube. Did the streaming and the YouTube come after the podcasting, or was it all a bit of a, I'm doing everything at once now?
Well, actually, the streaming and YouTube had started way before. I had a channel on YouTube years and years ago that was me and my best friend, that we had started playing this game together, and we had listened to a couple of podcasts, and we were just like, yeah, we think we know enough about this game to talk about it. So we got a camera and started recording us talking about various aspects of the game. And that didn't go anywhere, mostly because it never gained traction enough for us to remain interested in doing it, and we both ended up moving away from each other, like physically. Like, we're still best friends, but we just physically were separated. So doing what we were doing with that channel just became impossible at that point. So we stopped doing that project, but my interest in YouTube and making videos never really went away. And I started my channel, the one that I'm currently posting semi-regularly to a couple years after that. So probably like 2014, 2015, somewhere around there is when I started that channel. And the purpose of that channel was to be a source of guide material. So like if you want to learn to play a new spec, if you wanted to pick up a completely different class, that was kind of the idea around that. But now I've kind of shifted to just general topics about World of Warcraft and kind of controversial topics. So like with the recent Shadowlands stuff that we've seen, and I'm not going to get into spoilers with this too much, but the Covenant system is a very, very hotly debated topic, and has been the centerpiece for some of my more recent videos because I honestly think that while there is a lot of good stuff going on with the Covenant system and all that it entails, there definitely is more work that needs to be done before we see this game ship. So that's kind of where I'm directing most of my content creation outside of the podcast that I'm on, which is more focused on storytelling. Which I don't know about you, but for me, the storytelling for the last like 3 expansions, like including Shadowlands and what we've seen so far of the storytelling there, has been some of the most phenomenal storytelling that the World of Warcraft team has ever put out, including the novels, the Before the Storm novel by Christy Golden, going into BFA, and the newest novel, Shadows Rising by Madeline Rue. Both of those novels are like my top 2 novels in the Warcraft universe, just because they do such a good job of like getting you into the world and seeing outside of like just go kill like 15 of these things. You're fine.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think being that roleplay is the big thing for me in game. The story is what keeps pulling you back, even if like, for instance, gameplay is not the greatest or anything like that, or it's just not, the story is still something that will always make me want to grab an expansion, play through it. And some expansions have more longevity than others, I guess.
Of course.
But I think story is a very big part of that. And this is actually something that I'm really curious about, because I've talked about this with Berserker last time I recorded, and for me, and I don't know how you feel about that, but again, you seem to be very much into lore and story. I do feel like, in the beginning it was, I wouldn't say easy, but a bit easier, because Blizzard had story to build upon, because they had Warcraft 3, and they could build upon that in the world of Warcraft. And then after Wrath of the Lich King, it had to be sort of unique, because that was something we hadn't seen yet.
Right.
And I always feel like Blizzard starts off really strong with their expansions and their stories. And you're like, yeah, this is actually really, really good. And I want to know what happens. And then it tends to take a bit of a weird turn for me personally with the story, that I'm like, okay, that I didn't expect that. Okay, yeah, that's different, but it's not always for the best.
Right.
I've had, and this is really weird for me, but there were parts that I was just like, I am so not interested in what's happening here, and I don't care anymore that we're fighting Deathwing. Who cares about that Thrall is now another, I don't care anymore about this. And, sometimes it felt like, okay, I know this is fantasy, I know that, but even that sometimes felt a little bit like, this is so far-fetched. I can't find myself into it anymore. And I do feel that it has been reined in a little bit, and I do feel like also now especially with the last book from Madeline Rue, that it seems to be like the books are not the end all and be all of you need to read the books, otherwise you won't understand what happens in your expansion.
Right.
So it's more like putting a bit of meat on the bones. That's how I see these books now. Just to give it a bit more extra flavor and more immersion in the characters. But I do still have parts that I'm like, is this it? Like, for instance, the N'Zoth ending. I hope to God that that's not it, because it felt like that's such a build-up for the whole, expansion. Oh my God. And then it's like, okay, that's it. So some people feel like with lore, it's like, oh my God, yes. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, bringing up the N'Zoth fight is... it's interesting because the whole of the BFA story was kind of an unclever ruse, is the way that I like to put it, because like the title of the expansion, Battle for Azeroth, like obviously that's a double entendre. Like you're fighting for, or it was billed as like this faction war thing. Like the factions are fighting for supremacy on Azeroth. Who's going to be the top dog? Who's going to be the one calling the shots by the end of the expansion? No one was fooled. From the outset, no one was fooled. It was like, oh no, yeah, there's those old gods, and we're going to be fighting for the world soul of Azeroth. Like that's literally what we're doing here, because N'Zoth and or other entities of the void are trying to corrupt the world soul, which is nothing new. That's something that's been a constant story beat throughout the entire history of World of Warcraft. I mean, even going back into vanilla, like Cthulhu and Encourage, like that whole thing was like it evolved into much more than what it was presented as originally, which was just there are evil Lovecraftian beings on this planet that are seeking to destroy all life. And it has since evolved into this story that was kind of codified with the Chronicles, that the Titans, found out that there were all these world souls within all these planets, and they had to go find them to purify them and make sure that the Void Lords weren't corrupting them, and that like spun off the whole story with Sargeras, and basically everything that we've dealt with story wise in the World of Warcraft can be boiled down to that. Like that is the original thing that happened to the entire world, that catalyzed everything, absolutely everything. But this expansion with Shadowlands, and spoilers ahead for any of you that are not spoiler inclined, we're not dealing with Void Lords. We're dealing with a pantheon, like the Titans, that is not the Titans. It's that like we've known forever that the Titans are the creators. They're the ones that have ordered, or maybe not the creators initially, but they're the ones that ordered life and basically influenced everything in the world. And now we're dealing with an entirely different pantheon. So in the Chronicles, like one of the most iconic things is the chart at the beginning, the cosmology chart. And it shows that there are like the 6 different things like arcane, life, death, chaos, order. I think that's it. Is that 6? Did I hit 6? I'm just gonna say I hit 6 because I can't remember. But the Titans are kind of the order, pantheon, and in Shadowlands we're going to be dealing with the death aspect, the death pantheon, so to speak. So this is entirely new ground. Like what you were saying earlier, that like we had all this established lore up through Wrath of the Lich King, and then as of Cataclysm on, which even Cataclysm, I would say like we had established lore all the way up through Cataclysm, with Deathwing being not as prominent a figure as Arthas, but still a formidable entity within Warcraft lore. But this is the first time that we're dealing with something that is outside of anything that we've had, because also with the last 3 expansions, BFA Legion, well, I guess 4, BFA Legion, Warlords of Draenor, and Mist of Pandaria, all that stuff was like stuff that was like a one-off note in the annals that they fleshed out in great detail. This is the first expansion that we're getting that they are basically starting completely from scratch. Like they knew that the Shadowlands existed. Everyone knew the Shadowlands existed, but it has never ever really been fleshed out in any sort of capacity. So that's one of the reasons why I'm really, really excited. And like you had said earlier, like a lot of times when they're, doing these new stories, there's kind of a trade-off that happens. It's like they're introducing new lore into the game, but also they have to like flesh out everything that they can in order to make compelling story. But one of the things about Warcraft story is that not everything is for everyone, and that's okay. Like there are things that I might find interesting about the story that you would absolutely not, and that's perfectly fine. That's totally fine. Because the Warcraft universe is so vast, there's something for everyone. I truly believe that. I really, truly believe that there is something for everyone within the story of Warcraft. And that's one of the more beautiful things about this entire story as it's unfolded over the last, it's almost 25 years, over 25 years at this point.
Oh God, yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I think you're that's not a bad point to make, because from my own experience, I could say that I used to love dragons, and then at a certain point I got a bit like, okay, I'm fed up with them now. I see them everywhere. Yeah. And then we didn't have them for a very long time, and then Rathian of course comes back, and everyone is really enthusiastic, or at least most people are very enthusiastic. And I think you're right. At some points you're like, okay, this is not for me. This is not my cup of tea. And then something else happens in the game. I mean, they do keep it fresh with what's happening, and it's not always the same thing constantly. So having these new pantheons, that is actually quite cool. I do love things like that, because it means that there is like a certain bit of set lore, but we just don't know what it is yet. And I think that opens up so many opportunities for the future.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, let's rein it back into just you at this point in time.
Okay.
So, of course, what everyone wants to know, considering you're so into lore, are you Horde or Alliance?
Horde, all day. All day. If you had asked me that question 3 years ago, 2 years ago even, it had been Alliance.
Okay. But what made you switch?
Well, initially, it was to raid with my friends Manny and Joss of the For Azeroth podcast. Manny had been a longtime viewer of my show. I had like around the time that he got onto Pharazaroth, he, started, making it known that he was on Pharazaroth, and I was like, yeah, this is a good show. This is a great show. And then he just happened to drop that he was that his raid team was recruiting, and at that point they were in the AIE guild over on Earthen Ring. So I hopped over to Earthen Ring, joined the guild, joined the raid team, and all of my alliance biases against the Horde were just completely obliterated. Like in an instant. Like I joined the guild, joined the raid team, and it was just like, no, yeah, I get it now. I see why this is the superior faction, unequivocally. this is where I belong now.
Okay.
I've always kind of had an interest in the Horde.
Yeah.
And my co-host Shoeboots always likes to give me grief because most of my characters are blood elves, and he has this whole diatribe that he goes on where he says that all Horde players really just play blood elves and nothing else. Which there are a lot of blood elves. I will give him that. But that is not the point. By any means. That is not the point. But I've always had an interest in the story of the Horde races, specifically with the Blood Elves, just because their story is so intertwined with the Arthas storyline, and their entire inclusion in the Horde is because of the events of the march that Arthas took on Quel'Thalas and the fallout from that, and that's always been like one of my favorite stories told in World of Warcraft. So that's why I play it. It's not because they're the pretty ones. It's because they have an interesting story and I like it. But yeah, I don't know what kept me for so long from playing, because I'd made Horde characters before, but never really invested in it and I think in large part because the guilds and the teams that I was on were all Alliance. Like even as I was also in the Convert to Raid guild for a time, and even before that, like all the people that I played with were all Alliance, and I had never really even thought about it as an option, but here I am now, bleeding red.
See, things can change. Do you still feel, because especially with BFA and if you're into story, I've always felt like you need to level through both Horde and Alliance areas in BFA, because you're missing a massive chunk of the story if you don't. Are you still so you're still keeping up with your Alliance characters just maybe for lore, or? Yes.
And that statement I feel is true no matter the expansion. It was definitely like stressed with BFA because the stories were so tied to the separate factions, and the fact that the factions were on completely different continents through their leveling experience. Like I within the first 2 weeks had played through both campaigns, just because I'm a madman and don't really like missing out on story, and just chew through all that content as quickly as I possibly can, and end up sitting in my chair like, oh, I need more. When's the next patch? Oh my god. But I feel like that's true of every expansion. I feel that the story of Warcraft is definitely definitely the tale of two factions. So in order to get the whole story of the World of Warcraft, you need to be invested in both factions. So I would say not always, but I've tried my hardest to get as much of the story from both sides of the game as possible. I think in Cataclysm was when, like towards the end of Cataclysm was when I started trying to get more of the story, and part of that was because the Horde, I had heard, had some really cool storylines through like the 20 to 40 area that involved Garrosh, and I really wanted to see that, so I started leveling a Horde character towards the end of Cataclysm, just to see all of that. But as expansions kept coming out, I was just like, okay, I'm only getting half the story here. I really need to go see what's going on the other side. So that's kind of always been a thing for me, and I don't think that that's going to go away anytime soon.
Okay, fair enough. You already said that, you get slightly teased for the fact that you play Blood Elf. So what is your main?
My main currently is a Blood Elf Paladin, who in like my head canon is still a high elf. Like he was not there for the events of Arthas's campaign, and happened to come back to the city and was just like, oh, everything's fucked up. I guess I'll help.
Okay, so you must be pretty happy with the customization of the eyes.
Absolutely, I've been waiting for it for so long, so very long, and not just the eyes either. It's the ears too, because high elves have historically longer ears, and it's a whole thing. I won't get into it too much, but like everything about the customization that's coming to the Blood Elf is, it's so good.
Okay, you've already said that you saw the Wrath announcement, and that's when you fell in love with the game. Was that also really the point in the game that you were like, okay, this is it now, I will play this, or did that come later when you actually started playing?
Well, that I would say fairly early on within the Wrath of the Lich King expansion, I was just like, okay, I'm in. All my chips, here you go, have them. They're yours, Blizzard. Don't do me wrong. I'm trusting you. Just do the thing that you just keep doing this, and you're fine. But that was so my first character was a Night Elf Hunter, and I got it. I remember explicitly, because I'd started that character before the expansion actually dropped, and then like of course the Death Knight class came out with the expansion, and my little brother already had a level 70 character. He was getting into the actual story of Wrath of the Lich King on Northrend, like way before I even dreamed of getting there, and so he was already playing with the Death Knight class, and I just happened to look over at his computer and was just like, hey, that looks pretty cool. How do I get that? He was like, you got to get to level 55. So that's exactly what I did. I hunkered down, got my hunter to level 55, and immediately, as soon as I logged out, created my Death Knight. And got all the way through to level 80 on that Death Knight. And that whole experience of getting to 55, unlocking the Death Knight, and getting through and seeing an expansion as it was, meant to be seen, because I'd gone through Burning Crusade content, obviously, having leveled through to 80, but it wasn't current when I went through it. So I was kind of just like, this is cool. Oh, hey, there's Illidan. Cool. Where's Arthas? But that was really like what got me hooked was that.
Okay. But because you said that you had to go through old content a little bit, and Wrath is not that far from classic WoW really. Before
No,
they
it's
of
not.
course did the big overhaul that they did in Cataclysm, so you have experienced a little bit of that. But were you one of those people when classic was live that you thought, okay, I'm going to go into classic now and try that out, or were you like, nah, I remember this, I don't need this?
Oh no, I having not experienced vanilla itself, I was from the day that they announced classic, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna spend way too much time, and exactly what I said then is true now. I have spent entirely too much time in classic. I got my paladin up to level 60 in early January of this year, and have been working on a warlock for the last couple of months, trying to get that leveled up, because I foolishly was just like, I'll just go ret, it'll be fine. I know they don't do that much damage, but it's fine, I'll find a raid team. No. If you play paladin, you heal. You don't do anything else. You just heal. That's all you do. Sit down and heal. And I'm not really into healing in classic. Like, it's just you hit one button, and like, admittedly a lot of classes are just you hit one button, but it's difficult to explain why I don't really like healing, because I started healing in the game in Cataclysm when they kind of changed how healing works. That
was rough. I can tell you now. That was a rough thing that you put down for yourself there.
But I hadn't.
It was awful.
I hadn't had the experience of healing before then. That was the only experience I had. So I grew up, quote unquote, grew up with that healing, and that's the style of healing that I like. I like the like quasi-reactionary, like whack-a-mole game that you're playing, and that's just not the case in classic. That's not how healing works at all. Like it's very, very much tedious. Like, you've got everything basically planned out to the T, what you specifically are doing in conjunction with your team, and it's very plan heavy, and if you don't have a good heal lead that is willing to assign stuff, it is a nightmare to try to work through, whereas the healing teams of like 2 to 4 that were kind of like solidified within the overhaul of healing in Cataclysm, that was much more like manageable and palatable to me. So the fact that I can't play a ret paladin is what made me decide to level a warlock, and I think I just hit 38 on that warlock this week.
Okay.
So not terribly far off. I'm still probably about a month from having that character hit cap, and be able to get into the raiding scene on that character. But even still, the leveling experience of classic has always been something that I remember fondly, and even going through now and seeing this story as it was then. To some extent, there obviously there are things that have changed since vanilla that are there in classic that weren't there at original launch. But even still, there's just something about it that I really, really enjoy. And the leveling process in Classic is really what draws me to that, because it's more about the journey, less about the destination. And that's something that every expansion has had, because they need to get people to end game.
Yeah.
But because that's where the content is. That's like the raiding, the dungeons, the PvP, all of that is like everything's balanced around in game. Whereas Classic was more just like, hey, you're a person. Can you help?
Yeah, there was a different sort of social aspect, I would say. I guess with a lot of things. Okay, what would you say, looking at current times? What is the current obsession that you have in Battle for Azeroth? So what is it that you find yourself doing a lot?
Well, it's interesting you should say that. I have completed my goals for Battle for Azeroth, specifically. I've gotten ahead of the curve in all 3 raid tiers this expansion. I kind of dipped out a little bit after we got ahead of the curve in this last raid in Nyalotha, and I've come back here and there to do some stuff. Mostly what I'm working on now in retail is just getting characters leveled up, because of course with the whole COVID thing, they granted us the double experience bonus, and that still hasn't gone away, so I'm still taking advantage of it, because why wouldn't you? So I'm leveling a couple more classes. I've gotten 8 of the 12 classes to cap already.
Okay.
And that's been one of my long-term goals with my my WoW career, has been to have one of every class at cap, and I haven't done that yet. So that's one of the things I'm working on with the time that we have left in Battle for Azeroth. And the other thing was that I was working on getting my Warglaives of Azeroth transmog for my Demon Hunter, which I got.
Oh, nice!
With the last time walking for BC. I went in and did the raid, beat Illidan, because I had, funnily enough, I had gotten in early May, I think, was when the Warglaives dropped. I got both of them at the same time.
Wow, that's very lucky.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened, but I was just like, okay, I got them. I got to get the transmog now. I'm contractually obligated to do so. So that was one of my goals, was to do that. And so I think it was in either late June or early July when we had the last BC time walking. So I did that, got that transmog unlocked, and have not taken that transmog off of my Demon Hunter since. Because
and rightfully so.
Like, why would you do anything else?
Exactly. Okay, so let's jump a little bit into hopefully not the long future, but a bit closer. What are your feelings and thoughts when it comes to Shadowlands?
I have mixed feelings.
Okay.
Mostly positive. I will say that. Like, they're mixed, mostly positive. The story in Shadowlands is going to be great. I have absolutely no doubt about that. This thing that they're doing with the Covenants and splitting the story up into 4 separate things, that, like, you can choose to play through on 4 different characters, or you can just pick one and be happy with it. Like, you'll still get the full story of the expansion. Like, you're not going to be left behind on any of the major story beats. But as with the faction war in BFA and with the Legion artifacts. Like it's something that that they've kind of taken a liking to with their approach to the storytelling aspect of the expansions. In that breaking it up makes it a little bit easier to develop, A, and B, makes it a little bit more palatable. Which, of course, like, you run into the problems of, like, in order to get the whole story, every last possible detail out of the story, you need to play both sides. But as I'd said earlier, like, I feel like that's something that's not new. But in regard to Shadowlands specifically, the story is going to be great. From what we've seen mechanically with all the class changes that have been coming out, classes are looking to be in the strongest positions they've been in a very long time. Much better than they were in BFA, certainly. Because all the classes were designed around Azerite armor, and that whole thing. And even in Legion, that, like, the classes were designed around the artifacts that you picked up, which wasn't really that egregious because every spec had their own artifact weapon. Everything kind of was able to be its own thing, and everything felt good to play still. But with Shadowlands, everything is looking like from just a baseline, like, not looking at, like, what we're getting out of the Covenants, not looking at the legendary system, not looking at any of the other stuff sprinkled on top. Classes are in a really good spot. Where my less than good feelings about the expansion come from are rightfully so within the Covenant system itself. And they've done a lot over the last couple of months within alpha and beta to fix a lot of the issues that players that have been testing have brought up. Like, for example, they, the Soulbind system with the conduits, that changing it from being like having the conduits be kind of like a gem system where they're destroyed when you place a new conduit in, to now you're just collecting the conduits. They go into a library and you change them out like you change talents. Like, that's really solid change and shows that the team is really listening to the feedback that players are giving them. And also, bringing it back to the classes for Shadowlands, the huge Shadow Priest change that just happened, that came out with the latest build of the beta this week. Shadow Priest is rocking. Like, it's always kind of been a good spec, but it's always kind of been a bad spec too. And if that's confusing, what I mean by that is the Shadow Priest has always been a class spec that has been necessary, kind of really strong historically, right? To the point that you want like one or two on every team, explicitly because of the single target damage that they are able to deal. But their shortcomings have been a very long list for a very long time, and the changes that they're making, that they have made and are continuing to work on within the beta, are showing that they're listening. They're listening to the feedback. They're changing the class to make it feel better, to make it make sense, to make it not not just be this one thing only, and be able to really shine in more areas than previously they were able to.
Mm-hmm. And I think, it's difficult, isn't it? Because something that someone might really enjoy, someone else might not really enjoy. So I don't think you, as a creator, you could never make everyone happy. There will always be someone who doesn't like a certain thing. And I think we've all known that class balance is like the hardest thing out there. I'm not going to deny that. I don't know. Every time they introduce a new class, I'm like, oh, this is, it looks really cool, but I wonder what's going to happen with everything else.
Oh yeah.
So, it's a hard thing. But yeah, I agree with you. I think especially seeing that overhaul in Shadow Priest all of a sudden, that just shows that they are listening and they're not like, oh, we don't care. So I'm sure that they will also look at Survival Hunter for a lot of those out there now. And, there are a few classes that are just, I don't want to say hard done by, but just don't play as great or with as much fun as some of the other classes. And I'm sure that Blizzard is fully aware of that and seeing the feedback. But I think also people are, most people, not everyone, but most people are also very good with saying where it lacks and what would potentially be better. And they can work from that. I think that, just saying something, oh, it really sucks, like the forums used to do back in the day, that just doesn't help.
Yeah. Well, and I would say that the forums, specifically the forums, that still happens quite a lot. Anyone familiar with Taliesin and Evatel's show, the forums are quite often a shit show. Obviously. And they've always been. That has not necessarily changed. It's lessened over the years, and I think partially that has to do with the fact that the player base has grown up with this game, and a lot of the people that are playing this game now have matured to the point that they know that vitriol doesn't get you anywhere, and if it does get you anywhere, it doesn't get you anywhere pleasant, and that's my mentality when it comes to feedback. Is something that I would like to see more of the community take on. It's not just enough to say something is bad. You need to critically think about why something is bad, and also on the same side of that token, critically think about what would make it better. Like, you have a problem with Shadow Priest. Saying it's bad. Okay, cool. You said it's bad. What about it is bad? It doesn't have good burst AoE. Okay. How can we make it to where the Shadow Priest has burst AoE that feels good to play and unique to the Shadow Priest, that is something that another class might be able to do, but doesn't do it in the same way. That's the kind of things that you have to think about when giving feedback, and that I feel is the key to this game evolving. And I would posit the argument that all of the evolutions that the game has undergone over the years have been because people have been giving that kind of feedback, because they're not gonna listen. The team isn't gonna listen to someone just screaming about their enhancement shaman not being the top DPS. Like, that's just not it's not how this works at all.
No, and Blizzard is not stupid. I think they realize that certain specs just don't play as they want it to play. Right. But sometimes, everyone is just human. We're not computers. We can't immediately go, oh, that's where the fault is. But sometimes seeing it from a player's perspective, just puts it into different kind of words, and that might actually make them realize, oh, maybe if we change this, then I think sometimes people think it's too easy. Oh yeah, you just switch a button. It's not really how it works. Especially with pruning and deep pruning, and you try to keep the class fresh, but also still familiar, and that is a very big challenge, I think, with every expansion to do that with classes, let alone everything else that happens in the game. Okay, so we talked a little bit about the covenants already, and the 4 that there are. For you, for your mains, say that you are sticking with Paladin. Have you already picked a covenant that you're like, okay, this is the best covenant for my Paladin because it fits them best lore-wise, or aesthetics even? Or is it something like, no, I need to have the covenant that has the best DPS, and that's what I will have?
Well, luckily for me, the Paladin, the obvious choice is Kyrian, and it also happens to be the best DPS. So so that's an easy choice for the Paladin, hands down. I will say that I have not picked my main for Shadowlands yet.
Okay.
And as much as I love the Paladin, I think that I'm not going to be maining it in Shadowlands, strictly because I had hope that they were going to move away from Holy Power, as they did with Protection and Holy. Like they kept it on Retribution. I dealt with it. It's fine. But then they went back. They went immediately back this expansion and brought back Holy Power as like the thing that the spec or the class itself uses as a resource, and I hate it. I hate it so much, and I want them to not have Holy Power as a thing, but for that reason, I think that I'm not going to be playing Paladin next expansion, at least as a main. Like, I'm probably going to have one. I'm going to level it up, and it's going to be my Kyrian character, and that's how I'm going to get the Kyrian story. But as far as my main goes, currently, as of this interview, this is subject to change. But currently, I'm leaning towards either Demon Hunter in the Necrolords, or Warlock in the Necrolords.
Okay,
and I really like Necrolords.
Is it for aesthetics reasons, or just that fits your character the best? Those two classes.
I think it fits the character the best for those two classes specifically. Like the Demon Hunter Covenant ability for Necrolords is very clunky, not easy to use. Doesn't really give you that much benefit unless you do like a very niche build. But it's Necrolord, so it's great because it's Necrolords. The Warlock, on the other hand, their Covenant ability is one of the stronger ones, at least for single target anyway. It is one of the stronger Covenant abilities that Warlocks have available, and also is Necrolord. So there's that.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. Do you think that, say that because you want to see the stories from all the different factions, so a lot of people feel like they have to do at least 4 characters for different factions. Are you more looking for, okay, this class fits better, or this race fits better, for instance, for Night Fae or for Venthyr, or is it just purely something that you've made up? Okay, no, I can make it work for this class or race no matter what.
Well, certainly for Night Fae and Kyrian, those two are very obvious choices for me, like lore wise. Like for the Kyrian, Paladin and Priest fit very, very, very well into the stories that that are being told through the Kyrian Covenant. And like the Kyrians, the Night Fae, obvious choice is Druid. Very clearly, the obvious choice is Druid, because it's like the whole concept of Ardenweld is that it's the flip side of the Emerald Dream. It's like where the Emerald Dream is spring and summer, Ardenweld is fall and winter. So that, like, I absolutely will be leveling a Druid with Ardenweld, with the Night Fae, and I absolutely will be leveling a priest or a paladin through the Kyrian Covenant in Bastion. The other two are kind of up for debate for me. Revendreth, in particular, that whole zone is very, it's very, Dracula. So I have a couple of options that I feel would fit fairly well within that. My Demon Hunter, actually, I would either go with the Venthyr or the Necrolords, because it works either way for me. I just really, really like the Necrolord Covenant and the entire aesthetic. So, like, that is leaning towards being like my main thing that I do. But I could see my Demon Hunter going in there. But here's the other thing with the Venthyr that I feel like works really extremely well, and that's Rogue. That is like grade A vampire territory, like sneaking in the shadows. You don't like daylight because it's not shadows, and it's like it works. It works perfectly fine. And the transmog, the leather transmog in Revendreth is like one of the best sets out of the Covenants, period, hands down.
Yeah.
So I feel like that works. I feel like that works really well. But I don't really see a whole lot else going for Revendreth in particular with the Venthyr. For me personally, anyway. I can't really fit like a paladin into Vampire Land. I can't fit, or like joining the vampires, right? I can't really fit, like I could fit a Death Knight into there fairly easily, because I mean, obviously the Blood Death Knights, that's kind of their aesthetic as well. But other than that, like, I'm at a loss as to what to put in to Venthyr. But for Necrolords, I'm just like, yeah, anything can go in there. That's absolutely.
Okay, and I guess, once we see more about the Covenants and their stories and everything, it might even change for a lot, because stories can sometimes really, really heavily influence everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Your alts, if you are going to level any alts, that will of course be a little bit different from pre-patch. I think already it will be a bit different. So we're getting a level squish, and if you want to start completely from the beginning, you can either do that with the new starter island, or you start wherever you want to start, really. So say that you roll a new character, and I'm just saying something. Easiest for me is always using the Death Knight as a example. Say you roll a Death Knight, and you're like, you know what? I have this Death Knight, but I really love Burning Crusade, so because Burning Crusade is my favorite, that's where the Death Knight will go. Or are you more like, no, Death Knight is a typical Wrath expansion, so I need to do all of Wrath? Or how do you pick? Do you look at the character and their race or their class, and decide upon that, or are you just going, no, I'm going with my favorite expansions, and that's where I'm going?
Well, it's an interesting thing that I hadn't really thought too much about, because leveling for me in the past has always been like, what's the most efficient way to get to level cap?
Mm-hmm.
Like, my first time through an expansion, that's like where I'm like heavily focused on the story aspects of things. But what I'm gonna say, I'll preface with, I play D&D a lot, and whenever I make a new character in D&D, I don't really consider like the class and race thing, like that choice. I don't consider it to be like the core of the character that I'm creating. I create a character and then pick a class and pick like the subclass based on what I want that character to do. So I feel like with this change that's coming, where previously leveling through this game, I have not had a great opportunity to do that necessarily. I have an even greater opportunity to do that with the change that's coming to the leveling system. And I say that because leveling through this game has always been, up to now, you play through the rework classic zones, you go to BC, you go to Wrath, you go to Mist, you go to Warlords, you go in, subsequential order. That kind of changed with the BFA change to the leveling system, where you can now pick, Wrath or BC, Cataclysm or Mist of Pandaria. That kind of opened things up a little bit, where you can say, no, I'm a veteran, like this character is a veteran of the Ice Crown raids. They're gonna go Wrath of the Lich King, or this character went through the Dark Portal and helped subdue Illidan. That is now opened up to that is the only thing that this character has done, whereas before it was, okay, I went through the Dark Portal, but then I went to Mist of Pandaria. I went to Pandaria and helped bring down Garrosh, which has kind of been like, it's understood that all of our characters have gone through all of this stuff, but now I can say this character only went to this, and then they just like went and started a family on a farm in Nagrand.
Oh, I like that.
For example.
I like that idea.
But now they're coming back. They're coming back to chase Sylvanas through into the Shadowlands and bring her to justice. Like, I feel like that leaves so much more opportunity for character development and growth, because you're not like burdened by having to explain where your character was at every single major event. Because if you think about it, the story of Warcraft is just massive war after massive war, endlessly. Constant, like existential threat to the entire planet is ongoing, and like, it's just nice to say, yeah, my character just didn't care about that particular one, or several different things that went on, or they were so scarred by the events of Ice Crown that they just had to go lay low for a while, to get their priorities in order. So I feel like that's gonna be where I'm coming from when I'm creating alts, or just creating a character to do a little bit of role play with. Like that to me is a lot more enjoyable than trying to explain like what my character was doing through this entire time.
Okay, I think that makes sense, and yeah, like you say, for a roleplay background, it makes it less tedious to write everything down as well.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. You said about the wars that we've been in. So, how do you feel about the whole factions now that we are sort of at peace with each other? Of course, until someone does something that the other one doesn't like, and then we're fully back into war. But how do you feel about the factions at the moment?
Well, to be perfectly honest, I feel like the factions have come to a natural story end. Mm-hmm. I know that they're not. Blizzard is going to continue to force a faction war between the Horde and the Alliance, and like there's nothing wrong with that necessarily. I have several characters that have gone through horrible atrocities with members of the other faction. Mm-hmm. That I feel like from a story perspective, it's not time to necessarily dissolve the Horde and the Alliance. But it might be time. It might be time to allow people to be a little bit more fluid with their allegiance.
Okay. How do you see that with being fluid?
So, I've thought about this a lot, and I feel like probably the best way for them to go about it would be to make some sort of like mercenary system where like you make a character and that character starts either Horde or Alliance. But that character either starts Horde or Alliance. And then once you get to about level 10, you can say, okay, I'm going to continue on with the Horde story as a Horde character. Or you have a second option that says, I'm going to become a mercenary. That would allow me to kind of not necessarily like flip factions. Like it would still work that you're still going to be like all of your leveling experience is going to be Horde leveling experience. But that option would allow me to play as a player, to play with other players of the opposite faction, or even you could even make it a little bit stricter than that, where like if you chose to be a mercenary, like you could only be in a guild with other mercenaries, other people that chose that option, where you can join groups of either faction, but still kind of be in one faction. I'm doing a very terrible job of explaining this. But yeah, that idea of choosing willingly to say, I'm going to go play with my friends on the Alliance side as a Horde character, is that like one of my biggest issues that like this community, this Warcraft community that we're part of, that has been growing for so long. I've made friends on Horde and Alliance side. I have like there was at one point during BFA even that I was raiding on two different teams, one of them Horde, one of them Alliance, and it would have been so much easier if I could have just done that on one character instead of having to upkeep two in order to keep them relevant for progression, and the tedium of keeping up two different characters to play with two different groups ended up being too big of a strain, and I ended up, stepping down from my alliance team and focusing all of my time and energy into my horde character to play with that raid team. But I would really like to be able to play with more people readily, not have to jump through so many hoops in order to play with different people. And I feel like at this point in the story would be a perfect time for that to happen. An absolutely perfect time, because there's an armistice, there's a treaty in place saying you don't fuck with us, we don't fuck with you. I feel like that there's absolutely room to say, hey, King Anduin is sending me to Orgrimmar to act as a liaison to do something to help with one of the problems that's plaguing the High Elves or something like that. Like there is room within the story for that kind of stuff to be plausible.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think mercenary mode is definitely a possibility. I mean, it's a little bit strange when you can see it already happening, actually with NPCs in the game. And I'm looking at that happens, and there don't seem to be any dire consequences for that. So I find it interesting, and I'm very curious to see what Blizzard will do with this. Also, just because of a money-making point of view. They've already made some decisions, for instance, the fact that you now can just change your gender at the hairdressers. I also think that they need to change the name of that, the hairdressers, because you can do a lot more than just get your hair cut.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like it was so easy to say back in the day, oh, they never will do that because it will cost them money. But on the other hand, they have done things like that. So who knows? Okay, so you previously said about, that you are a bit constricted with the fact that you want to play sometimes with friends who are on Alliance, but, being Horde and everything, that makes it difficult. But what has the Warcraft community meant to you?
So much. I don't really think it hit me how much the Warcraft community means to me until I went to my first BlizzCon 2 years ago. Which, by the way, very, very, very sad that we don't get a BlizzCon this year, at least an in-person one. I think that there have been rumors, if not an unofficial announcement, that they're doing a virtual BlizzCon type thing in late winter, early spring 2021. But it's just not the same as going to California to actually physically be present with all these nerds that I played this wonderful video game with. But I mean, even outside of BlizzCon, the people that I've met, the friends that I've made, have meant the world to me. I have better friends online in the Warcraft community than I have in real life, and it's all because we, played the same game and raided together, or just met questing out in the world somewhere, and just hey, you want to come help with this quest? And then boom, there's a 10-year-long friendship there. So the Warcraft community to me has been has been really one of the things that keeps me going. Because without Warcraft, I honestly have no idea where I'd be.
Yeah,
at this point in my life.
A lot of people have that same feeling. I think you're really not alone in that. And I think, like you said, the experiences that you get in game with these people who share the same experience and the same love for a game that we all love, even though sometimes we rip on it and we're not happy with certain things. I think deep down we still love it, and I think that creates a very, very strong bond among people.
Yep.
But it's society who always says, "Oh, it's just a video game. You've never seen these people, so that's not real." I'm going to say that luckily it seems like we're drifting away a little bit of that viewpoint, because especially now, as weird as it sounds, with COVID-19, I think people have realized actually, online you can build up friendships and things like that.
No, absolutely.
If you have a choice. So, yeah. I agree with you, and I think a lot of people are with you that the community can have a massive impact on people. Okay, let's go to a fairly lighter question. What's your favorite in-game food?
What is my favorite in-game food? Does beer count as food?
Yes, if you want to.
I would say the God, just like any of the dwarven ales are just my favorite. I just really like ale. I don't really have like a deep answer to that. It's I just really like ale.
That's a good enough answer for me.
Yeah, to kind of tie it into like real world stuff. I had visited the UK and Scotland 2 summers ago, and had my first true Scotch ale that summer, and like all of the beers that I have had in my life didn't hold a candle to the wind. Oh, so good. And I'd like that for that reason alone. I'm just like, yeah, anything Dwarven ale. Yeah, I'm there. 100%.
Okay. Quick question. Have you ever had any Dutch or Belgian beers?
Belgian, yes. Dutch, no.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll have to fight you for that because, as a Dutchie, we're very proud of our beers. So,
well, if you have any to recommend, I will surely try my best to get a hold of them and try them. I'm always interested in trying new beers.
From what I hear from because I only drink like the ciders that we have in Holland. I'm not a real beer drinker, but from what I hear from my Dutch friends, apparently Heineken is very, or as the English say, Heineken. I don't know why, but it's Heineken. Or Grols. So you need to make sure you can do that phlegm sound. Don't call it Grols. It's Grols.
Am I doing
That's
it
perfect.
justice?
That's perfect.
Excellent, thank you.
I hear that those are very good, but most of the Dutch beers are, what I hear, all good. So,
Well, I will definitely have to try it out. I think I have tried Heineken before.
Yeah, it's a different sort of. From what I hear from my English friends, it's different lager than what they're used to here. I guess it's different for every country. Every country, it's a bit different with that. I never realized that until you move countries. Then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, that is different.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing the food and drink that people make all over the world. One of the things on my bucket list is to try as many different foods and drinks as possible.
I think that's a really, really cool thing. Because, I can say from experience, even tea is different in different countries, or how they make it. That just surprised me to no end. Yeah, very, very curious about all of that. But no, that sounds really cool. And if you ever do, please let me know how that went, because I always love hearing stories like that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Jared, we've hit the final question of the podcast, which is, what is your whisper? If you're new and you've never, this is the first time you hear this episode, you're like, what the fuck is a whisper? I still don't know. I just made this up. So a whisper is basically, it could be anything. So anything that you want to say about the game, or maybe a wish for the game, game mechanics you want implemented or taken out. We're doing a lot of unpruning at the moment. A bit of fairy crafting, maybe about the story, anything like that. It could be anything that has to do with World of Warcraft. So what is your whisper?
I would like to see the talent system be overhauled again.
Okay.
To bring it not necessarily back to the way it was before Mr. Pandaria. Like I had my problems with the talent system in Wrath and Cataclysm both. There were glaring issues that needed to be fixed, and they fixed some of the issues in Cataclysm that were present in Wrath, but not all of them, and created new ones. And I feel like the talent shift from Kata to Mop really just kind of ruined talents for me altogether. Like how I think about talents and specializations, for that matter. Because now with the new system that was introduced in Mop, and has not, like, the talents themselves have changed, but the system has not changed since Mr. Pandaria. Like, we've had this talent system for longer than the talent system that existed before it at this point.
So just a bit of a refresher of a different form?
Yeah, so like before, in like Cataclysm and before, it was like every level or every other level, you would get a point, and like every specialization tree had a certain number of points that you could put into it, and you could like dip points into other trees. So like using Paladin as an example, like if you wanted to be a Retribution Paladin, you could put most of your points in Retribution. It would make you a Retribution Paladin, for the purposes of like queuing into dungeons and all that kind of stuff. But you could then take talent points out of either the Holy or the Protection tree if you wanted to kind of make like a niche build, or you could just dump all your points into the Retribution tree. And that was perfectly viable. With the shift from the Kata and pre-Kata version to Mist, it's now you pick your specialization, and your specialization dictates a grid of I think it's like 3x9 or something like that. That every row you get to pick one of those, and those are your talents that you pick. And they've made it like very easy for you to switch talents on the fly, but there has not been any gravity in the choices that you're making for your character since this change in talents happened in Mist of Pandaria. And all of this talk about covenants being like they wanted to give players like a meaningful choice for your character. I get that. I think that including more of that in the game is good. Making like not meaningful choices necessarily in terms of narrative of what your character is doing within the story, but meaningful choices for your character that express themselves in how your character deals with the world. Covenant systems, having that being a quasi-permanent choice, isn't enough. It's not nearly enough for what they're trying to do. And I feel like having the talent system being shifted from this current system to something that is a lot more quasi-permanent, because like talents were never permanent. You could always go to a trainer and change your talents. And even before in Wrath and Cataclysm, like you had to go to a trainer to change your specialization as well. I feel like going more towards that quasi-permanent like character choice thing of like, I'm a retribution paladin, but my buddy really needs a healer for this dungeon, so I'm gonna go change to holy, so I can do a couple of dungeons with them, and then I'll change back for raid on Thursday or something like that. That kind of decision needs to be put back into the game, but in order to do that, they would have to change the talents as they are currently. Like all of the talents that are available, both in live and in the Shadowlands beta, very high impact, very like niche in situational priority, I guess is the best way to put that. So that needs to be shifted back into more of what we had in the talents, where it's like your Crusader Strike deals 5% more damage after using Judgment or something like that. Like making talents that are more incremental and low impact is the way that things need to go. And they don't necessarily need to go back to the full tree thing. They can do it within the system they currently have. Maybe add like a handful more rows, but making them lower impact would need to happen in order for them to make it more towards where you're having to go back to a trainer to change and pay gold in order to or just have some sort of payment that you have to make in order to do that. So that's what I would like to see changed about World of Warcraft in the future.
Okay, well, they've changed many things that we thought they would never do, so who knows? It's not a bad idea, actually. Okay, well, Jared, thank you so much for the interview. It was so lovely to have you on the show.
Thank you for interviewing me.
Absolutely, it was a pleasure. If people want to find more about you on the internet or the podcast and everything else that you do, where can they find you?
Well, you can find me on my podcast, Merely a Setback. We record live on Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern time over on twitch.tv/Setback Podcast. And we also have a website, setbackpodcast.com, where you can find everything to do with that, from the link to our Discord, where you can talk to me about why I'm wrong about Kalia Menethil, or whatever you want to talk about. That is there. You can also find me on my personal Twitch. That's twitch.tv/JaredRPG. I stream every Thursday. I make it a point to stream every Thursday, but I also have additional streams throughout the week. So if you would like to stop by and say hello, that is twitch.tv/JaredRPG. You can also find my YouTube channel, where I have like a little mini web show called Walking and Talking, where I just pick a topic about something to do with World of Warcraft, or maybe even just MMOs in general, and talk about that for a couple of minutes. And that can be found on youtube.com/JaredAdventurer. Jared RPG was already taken, so I couldn't pick that. But yeah, and then you can also find me on Twitter at JaredRPG as well.
Okay, perfect. And I'll make sure that all those links are in the show notes. So Jared, again, thank you so much for being an amazing guest.
Thank you for being an amazing host. This was a wonderful interview.
Oh, thank you. So I hope you enjoyed that interview. It was lovely talking to Jared. And hopefully Jared will want to come back once Shadowlands has gone live. There are so many stories now that people keep saying, oh, it's not going to be long now because they've basically balanced everything out, except for the classes. So that's what they're focusing on right now. And that can't be that long. I don't know if it's going to be long. I am not a game designer. I have no realistic view of what is long in terms of balancing classes. But do you... Maybe beginning of October? End of October? I'm hoping personally end of October because, you know, birthday, and I can take a few weeks off. Which would be nice. At least I can focus a little bit on the story and all that stuff. So, yeah, we will see. We will see. But I don't think it will be as late as December. I think we're looking more at October, November. I think it's late October, early November. That's my prediction, and I'll probably be really, really wrong. But we'll see. I guess we'll do a little bit of prediction time in mid-September, and that's when you see when it will launch. Anyhow, other things that I wanted to know. So, my question for the week was, should the faction divide and war remain, or should it be removed? So I wanted to know why you felt that way, and if you would want to change it, how would it be done, you know? If we wouldn't have any factions, no horde or alliance anymore, how would that be done? So you guys responded en masse on Twitter. I've never had so many replies to a subject, so it's a long one. Fabri said, at this point I feel like the faction war is a hindrance, like it has been since Mist of Pandaria. It exists to justify the PvP side of the game, and whenever it's revisited, the Horde grabs the villain ball and the Alliance become victims. Would be interesting if we turn that around this time, wouldn't it? Just, you know, maybe the Alliance should get the the villain ball and the Horde the victims. We will see. There's a lot of speculation of what's to come anyway. So Demifarnov said, I understand its purpose to drive the story, and I don't see how they can move away from that given how deeply ingrained it is. However, I would love to play a character who doesn't partake of the faction war anymore. My Death Knight would happily be a mercenary for hire, as I'm tired of it. Yeah, I agree with that, because I can see my characters being mercenaries. One of my characters is a mercenary anyway, because that's how I roleplay her. Which leaves a little bit of a difficult side, you know, because Horde characters can't really talk to Alliance characters and so forth. But there you go. Sodi said, I really wish they would drop the faction war. I'd prefer world PvP went more so for guilds declaring war against each other. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. I wish I could play an Alliance tune with my Horde friends. Been Horde literally the entirety of my WoW career, and I just want to hang out at Stormwind. That I can fully understand. I would love some of my Hordies to hang out in Stormwind. Yeah. Playing with your friends does seem to be the biggest one. Scrubs vs. the World said, we've worked together so much now that our leaders are pretty much friends. I hope that the Alliance has a fracture so they can set up a third faction that is made up of the refugees of Horde and Alliance. Yeah, I like that idea. Nick Z said, we've seen the Horde nearly rip itself apart twice, and Anduin and Bane each visit the other capital. That's not war. That's not faction war. Make an Alliance or Horde good faction, and then one or two hostile factions that still want aggression. The ostensible, oh god, English is hard, bad guys, and give players a choice. Is that like the default bad guys? Is that what that word means? Someone teach me English. Media said, I want to drop the faction war, but I don't know if it makes sense to via the lore. Even if Bane and Anduin are homies, there are still big issues between the individual races. Trolls hate humans, Belves and Velves hate each other, Night Elves hate every Horde race, etc. Yeah, it feels like that. It does feel like that. I do like how you describe Bane and Anduin as homies. Okay. Ember Strife said, I would love to see them move away from it. The common enemy aspects have always been more engaging for me than the faction war aspects, or at least go about it differently. It always seems the same thing over and over, only upping the ante every time. Divides the community as well. Yeah, it does seem to be like the same thing, and it does divide the community. I understand where you're coming from. Villette said, drop the faction war and change it up with the new factions beyond those that are agnostic to race. That's interesting. I like that. Navox said, I am tired of the cyclical, oh my god, we hate each other, oh my god, old god, let's work together, lol, old god, pond, let's be friends, what's different, we are. While Savannah twirls her mustache and it's all, I would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for these meddling kids and their dog. I like that way that you describe that. Shorty said, it should remain. While frustrating at times, it can also be extremely interesting and help develop characters. This is especially if the next one is started by the Alliance rather than the Horde. As for the divide, I think Alliance and Horde should be able to play together. Yes. I agree a lot with this, and I'll give you my opinion afterwards, but I can almost say that I'm very much with Skull Shorties on this, but I'll give you my opinion a bit later. So Stressed Light Song said, let the factions still be there. Don't let them be at war with each other, cause, well, making the player base fight itself more than it already does isn't the greatest idea. Very true. McDucka said, it should remain narratively. I take pride in the factions, and I like faction conflict when done right, but I wouldn't be against the PvE mercenary mode that uses BOD race changes mechanics, because I don't really want orcs in Stormwind or humans in Orgrimmar either. Yeah, I kind of understand that. Velgrub, Warcraft has been about Alliance versus Horde since it was created in 1994. Getting rid of it would be like taking Star Trek and making it about cowboys. The problem is not faction and faction war itself, it's how Blizzard have mishandled it. I'm quite curious about how do you feel like it's been mishandled? What could have been done better? Scarlet High Lord Red Paligill, the Ashbringer, said, no faction friction? No, wow. It's what keeps the ball rolling. It does seem like it's very divided between everyone, you know. Some people really are like, nah, just take it away, or no, we need to have the faction friction there. Vladimir Kirsanov said, there are reasonably successful games with factions, and some games are good without factions. I think it depends on the execution. What, in my opinion, is worse than both of those options is to hop between them and frequently drag players in and out of conflict, watering down both aspects. And that is a little bit what's happening, I think, at times, so yeah. Honor Ted said, we're on a constant roller coaster. We fight, we come together to fight the big bad, and we go back to fighting. It's long past time for the faction divide to be removed. Let me play with my friends regardless of the race they play. BFA was the perfect opportunity to end it. BFA did feel like it was going to end that way. Terran and Jet said, factions can remain, but allow players to group up for PvE or world content, regardless of faction. PvP can stay the same, can even force mythic raids to be faction locked until the halls of fame are filled up. Yeah, it's all ideas. Sheerboot said, it makes no sense lore-wise to remove it completely, but also makes no sense to keep it entirely. The divide should continue, but players should be able to group up cross-faction for PvE content. Just use war mode. If it's off, you can group up. That's definitely a possibility of doing it. Z said, keep faction for lore, but drop it in game. It's really one of three things really holding this game back, and it's just going to get worse. I'm really wondering what the other two are. In your opinion, what's holding the game back? Valorin said, players should be allowed to interact regardless of faction. Virtually every expansion has us team up to fight a bigger bad guy. However, the faction divide and conflicts are important, so I'd never be in favor of a completely mandatory merging. I'd soften it up, not remove. Yeah, that's actually quite an interesting point. Maybe soften it up instead of completely getting rid of it. Kujin said, I want it to stay, but I'd also like ways to circumvent it for people who don't like the faction race choices. So like cross-faction battlegrounds, PvE, and maybe neutral passes into opposite factions or towns. Could be done. I'm going to struggle with this name. XOXO Shirt QT Best Wars 2021 says... also their username is a comfy shirt. I should have just said that one. Drop it and keep it for lore and add more stuff to war mode. Imbalance is so bad. Why can't... we can't even queue arenas right now. Who cares about anything when people can't do certain parts of the game at all? That is an interesting point, because I remember when the Alterac Valley event was up, that for Alliance it was instantly, also you lost instantly, but no, I'm not hating on Alliance, but you know, it was often the case. And for Horde it took a lot longer to get into a battleground, but 9 out of 10 times the group would win, which was interesting. So it does feel like there is a bit of a imbalance there with certain things. Gamer Oppressor said it should remain. Mercenary mode would be cool outside of Battlegrounds if people want it, but faction pride is a huge thing for a lot of the player base, myself included. But it'd also be nice to break away and not affiliate with the new Horde after being a Sylvanas loyalist. Yeah, because it really is a new Horde now, isn't it? So what if you chose to be a Sylvanas loyalist? Then it all plays a little bit different. That reminds me, I still need to do that whole choosing a side with the Horde character who picks Sylvanas. I can only do that on one character, so that will be my undead. So I still have to do that. Oh god, I still have to level. Okay. McPhil said, I think the faction divide should be removed. Hell, it should have been removed ages ago. I think we've been long overdue for some kind of peace treaty, armistice, whatever, since the aftermath of the battle from Mount Hyjal in Warcraft 3. I feel like Bliss threw out the moral lesson. I think that over the years of Warcraft WoW's narrative, the examples that prove that the factions are stronger and better together and can accomplish feats that one faction alone couldn't have, outnumber the examples where the war did any good or served a purpose. My dream scenario is that the factions remain, because faction aesthetics are honestly top shit, but that they cease hostilities. Worgen Nelves running around in Orgrimmar, guards friendly to him? No problem. Goblins and undead chilling in Exodar, guards giving no fucks? Hell yeah. The way you could handle PvP in this scenario is that it becomes more of a friendly rivalry rather than a fight to the death. The two factions would still compete for bragging rights, with a fair amount of shit talking like, oh yeah, well, we're the strongest and also best looking. So like Battlegrounds get slightly retooled to match the new status quo. If a PvP player gets downed, rather than dying, they simply drop to 1 health and a Drake comes and gets them and takes them to the med tent, where they get healed up to rejoin the action. I mean, it doesn't have to be a Drake necessarily, but yeah, the graveyards in all of the Battlegrounds get remade into med tents, and the resurrection timer becomes the getting bandaged up timer instead, and something comes and gets you once you've gotten down to 1 health. Could be a Valkyr, a Wyvern, a Griffin, something. It's a largely aesthetic change that wouldn't massively affect gameplay in practice, but would be hugely important in setting the new tone for the post-faction war world and the new state of affairs. Honestly, I just want them to cut the shit and deliver on the promise of the Thrall Jaina friendship from Warcraft 3. The powerful speech that Taran Zu gave us on the Isle of Thunder. They give us all these tiny moments that remind us that faction war is dumb and then never deliver on them. I like the ideas that you're coming out with, you know, to change certain things, and it would just have to be updated with small changes. But the last thing that is being said, I find really interesting, that you know, Blizzard gives us tiny moments that remind us that faction war is dumb, but then never deliver upon it. That is really, really true. We do get that a lot, and then something happens and, you know, we forget all of that. It will be interesting to see. I am really, really curious about future expansions and what they will do with this, because this seems to be such a hot topic for so many players. Mad Avoid said it should remain, but I don't mind them opening up more cross-faction interactions, especially in expansions like Shadowlands, where the Covenants are our factions. World of Warcraft isn't World of Warcraft without the Alliance versus the Horde. Dragovian Knight said the faction war is played out and continually flattens the racial diversity of the factions to orcs and other orcs versus humans and other humans. Time to stop contriving reasons to keep red versus blue front and center and let conflicts and alliances flow along cultural lines. Aislinn Asmira said it should be abolished, frankly. In my opinion, all it does is hinder stories that could otherwise be really good. BFA could have actually been so much better told if they didn't push the faction war into it. Dan said communicate with the other faction openly. Unless war mode is turned on, group up and party with them. Capital cities are secret clubhouses though, still kill on sight. The narrative doesn't need to change much, just give the players an actual decision how they want to play the game. For me, there's also the real life angle, because we live in such a time where racial divisions are being drawn more extremely. Having it in a game going forward is not a good look. Bliss is the only one who hasn't dropped it. There's also the dividing the player base angle. How much more interesting would it be to combine Alliance and Horde racials into a raid team? It also saves Bliss a shit ton of work not having to design 2 versions of everything. Like, there's not much to lose here, except stubborn people who want to play the game like it's still 2004. Let me hug my Tauren friends and high five an orc Bliss. It's okay. We're adults. We can play nice. Shorwell said, I would prefer that it go away, because I think it limits the kinds of stories that can be told. Frasley said, lore-wise, I can see them wanting to remove it, but I think you should be also able to play with anyone regardless of faction, whether partying or raiding. Old school JRL said, no need for war, but faction loyalty should stay, though I think a third neutral faction should be made. Right, so with the faction divide, it also seems that there is a big divide between all of you guys. Some of it goes a little bit, it overlaps. You can definitely hear that. So it made me think for a lot of things. I still think that the faction divide is... don't be offended, but I think it's far-fetched to say that it almost looks like what we've had, the racial divide that we've had as human beings. I don't think it's that much similar, because it's still a fantasy game, but I can see why people see that or think that. Personally, I've never experienced that. If other people have, it can happen, I guess, and so there's something to say to maybe abolish it because of that, but I don't know. I find that a very difficult reason for abolishing the factions in World of Warcraft. However, factions, in my opinion, are... I think the faction identity is important, because it's not... it depends how you act with it, with anything in life. If you're going to be an asshole on either side and just say that the other side sucks, and they're... and really sling like very low-hitting insults, then I think you're just using a game to get rid of any prejudices that you have against people anyway. You're just trying to react to I don't know, I think you have issues, I'm sorry. But I think a little bit of faction pride and just a little bit of banter and jest, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with saying, oh, I bleed red or I bleed blue, or I love everything that's Horde, and just really feeling connected to that side, because there's also something like, Horde have always been the underdog, and some people really gravitate towards that, and other people really like the noble idea of the Alliance, and there's nothing wrong with that. So I think having the factions is not a bad idea, because that's where they came from, but I do feel like maybe a third faction and a mercenary mode, why can't that happen? I mean, you already have the Argent Crusade and many other factions that have, both sides, both Horde and Alliance races together, and we were all part of one unit in Legion. when we had class order halls, and you know, both sides work together with that. So I feel like we need to be somewhere in the middle. So still have the factions, but it's not like a full out war. And within the factions you have groups that really don't like certain races because of what has happened in the past. Yeah, so that's where I stand. I think a mercenary mode would be really, really good. Again, I don't see, you can get it in PvP, then why not? Why not have it? And again, war mode is one of those things that enables the whole, you can have the factions, but put war mode on and you can be one of those people in the faction that really hates the other side. And then other people are like, oh, whatever, you know, I'm an orc and I don't care that there's a human there, whatever, I'm just doing my thing here. So that's what I'm really hoping for. I hope that there is a third faction that will have this option that you're just neutral. I don't know if I really want to see Alliance characters in the Horde cities. But again, I guess that has to do with identity. I don't find it that framed that weird that the leaders of the factions visit each other, because that's more political. But for random players or random characters to just be in the other city, I don't know, it's a bit, it feels really weird, but it could also create a lot of new things. I do feel like, well, a lot of you have said that, you know, it's always the same concept, and that's one of my big gripes as well. You know, oh, we hate each other, oh, but the enemy of the enemy is my friend, let's fight it together, and then there's an awkward sort of peace until we piss each other off. I think that concept is old, and I do agree that the Alliance maybe now needs to get the villain stamp, maybe for a little bit. Not like permanent villain, but you know, maybe their faction should do something now that might not seem as the greatest. So yeah, that's where I really stand. A lot of games have factions in it. I do feel like Blizzard needs to reinvent it maybe a little bit, you know, refresh it, put something new in there, because we've done the same thing now for a very long time. Try and get something new and refreshing in there. And I think because so many people have replied to this topic, I think there will be something that will happen with this in the future. I don't think Blizzard is that blind. I think they completely see that they need to give this a bit of a good scrub and see what they can come up with to make it more interesting. But on the other hand, what do you do if so many people say, well, that's not Warcraft? It's a tough one. It's a very tough one. I would like to see some things, you know, change, because I would love to have some Horde characters interacting with Alliance characters. Also for RP reasons, I think that would be really, really cool. And there are already so many instances where you see the two factions do stuff with each other. You know, they already deal with each other in Booty Bay or in other areas like the class order halls, and now in Shadowlands with the Covenant. So we need to do something. Something needs to be done to this whole faction divide, that it can maybe merge a tiny bit. But yeah, I guess we'll see. Again, I don't think we should get rid of Horde and Alliance, because I do think it's a big part of identity, and it does make the game. It's always been that way, and I don't mind it that way, but I want it refreshed. And that's not helping a lot, but that's how I feel. Yeah, so that's really it. And we will see. There will be many more controversial topics, no doubt, in the future. Anyhow, I am vastly approaching show 100, and I'm also seeing that the show runs over 2 hours, so thank you so much for your patience into listening to all of the talking that I've done. But yeah, with show 100 approaching, I would actually love to hear your voices. So I would really appreciate it if you could either send me a voice message, could be MP3 or WAV or whatever, as long as I can put it in Audacity, really, in which you let me know either what your favorite show was and why, Or I would love to hear what you're looking forward to in Shadowlands the most, and if there's a certain NPC that we might have lost in the past that you would like to see return in Shadowlands as a bit of a, hey, surprise, look who it is, and why. You can do both. If you want to send for both, that's fine. I don't mind if you do it in one MP3 or whatever sound file you use. That's fine with me as well. I'm just going to mix it up anyway. But yeah, I would like to hear your voices. Now, if you're really like, I'm not sending my voice in because I hate listening to myself, welcome to my life. That's why I don't like listening to my own voice when editing. You know, if you want to send an email or tweet, that's fine as well. I will post this question up as a question of the week, not this week, but the week after. So you can also reply in a tweet. But ideally, I would really, really love to fill that show with a lot of voices. So yeah, show 100 coming up soon. I did not expect that, so we shall see. Anyhow, I am going to end the show for today because it's been long enough. You had to wait for it a little bit, but you get something big back. So thank you so much for listening and downloading for all these shows. Also, if you're new. And where can you find everything? Well, if you want to find the older shows or the show notes, go to whispersofwar.podbean.com or go to dragonpoweredstudio.com/Discord if you want to be part of the conversation. Lots of lovely people and podcasts over there. So yeah, come join in. Twitter @whispers_of_war. And my personal one is McMonkeys with a Z. So that's MC Monkey with a Z at the end. Email whispersofwarpodcast@gmail.com for those MP3s that all of you are going to send in. Please do. At twitch.tv/McMonkeys with 2 Zs. And that's it, guys. Have a lovely weekend. I am going to try and play a little bit more World of Warcraft. I hope that you have a tip for me. Which classes beside the rogue I should give a shot. I will give it a go, I guess, and I'll probably make it into the question of the week as well. But yeah, enjoy your week, and I will talk to you all next week. Bye-bye!
This show is brought to you by Dragon Powered Studio. Find more at dragonpoweredstudio.com.